We start the spectrum with white tea. This is the least processed of all. The leaves are simply harvested, often just the unopened fuzzy buds, and allowed to wither and dry naturally in the sun. It is unrefined, elegant, and velvety. Because it isn't bruised, rolled, or heated aggressively, the oxidation is minimal. The result is a silvery, downy appearance and a flavor profile that is light, floral, and slightly sweet, like honeysuckle or melon. It is the closest you can get to tasting the plant in its wild, natural state. Then we move to green tea. The goal here is to stop the clock. To keep the tea green, producers must kill the green, a process known as shacking. This involves heating the leaves immediately after harvest to destroy the enzymes that cause oxidation. In China, this is usually done by pan-firing the leaves in large heated woks. This creates a toasty, nutty, and slightly savory flavor profile. In Japan, however, they prefer high-pressure steaming. This results in a vibrant, seaweed-like, deep umami or grassy profile. Speaking of things that grow and thrive, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the DNA of the world's favorite drinks, take a second to hit the subscribe button and click the bell. We spend hundreds of hours researching these blueprints so you don't have to, and having you in the community helps us keep the kettle boiling. Now, back to the leaves. If white tea is raw and green tea is preserved, then oolong tea is the artist's tea. This is arguably the most complex category in existence because oolong is partially oxidized, ranging anywhere from 12% to 85%. This is the curiosity loop of the tea world. Why is oolong the favorite of tea nerds? Because the tea master must physically bruise the edges of the leaves, often by shaking them in bamboo baskets to start oxidation. Then fix them with heat at the exact right second to lock in a specific flavor. A light oolong might taste like fresh lilies, while a dark, heavily roasted rock oolong from the cliffs of Wuyi can taste like dark chocolate, charcoal, and stone fruit. To people unfamiliar with it, the flavor can be a shock. Some oolongs, like the Jinshuan variety, have a natural buttery, creamy mouthfeel that tastes like milk despite containing zero dairy. It is a masterclass in how human intervention can coax 1,000 different flavors out of a single green leaf. Next, we have the global heavyweight, black tea. In its homeland of China, this is actually called red tea, or Hong Cha, named for the reddish amber color of the liquid rather than the dry leaves. To make black tea, the leaves are fully oxidized. They are rolled or crushed to break the cell walls, allowing the enzymes to turn the leaves completely dark. And this process makes the tea rugged, bold, and, most importantly, shelf-stable. Historically, this was a massive geopolitical advantage. When tea was being shipped from China to Europe in the 1600s, green tea would often spoil or lose its fresh, volatile aromatics during the 6-month sea voyage. Black tea, however, actually mellowed and held its strength and even improved in some cases. This is why 84% of tea consumed in the West today is black tea. It was literally built for the age of exploration. The name Americano in the coffee world came from soldiers diluting strong espresso. Similarly, the English breakfast blend became a staple because the strong, fully oxidized black tea leaves from India and Sri Lanka could stand up to the addition of milk and sugar. Without the tannins of black tea, the British tradition of tea time would likely look very different today. It provides a structural bitterness that demands a complement, creating a rich, dessert-like experience in a cup. Now we enter the more extreme and mysterious categories that often baffle casual drinkers. Yellow tea is the rarest of the 6. It is processed similarly to green tea, but with an extra, labor-intensive step called menhuang, or sealed yellowing. The damp leaves are wrapped in special paper or cloth and allowed to lightly steam in their own residual heat. This removes the sharp, grassy bite of green tea and creates a mellow, silky, straw-colored liquid. Historically, this was the imperial tea reserved for the Chinese emperor, and even today, finding a true yellow tea outside of specialized boutique shops is a challenge. But the real shocker of the tea world, the one that resets every expectation, is pu'er. While the other teas rely on oxidation, a chemical reaction with air, Pu'er relies on fermentation, a biological reaction with microbes. It is alive. Pu'er is made from a specific large leaf variety of the tea plant found in the ancient forests of Yunnan, China. There are two primary styles that every enthusiast must know. Sheng, raw. Pu'er is aged naturally over decades. Much like a fine Bordeaux wine, the microbes on the leaf slowly transform the flavor from bitter and floral to deep, woody, and sweet over 20 or 30 years. Some of these vintage cakes, pressed into hard discs for storage, sell at auction for tens of thousands of dollars and are treated as financial assets. Shu, ripe. Pu'er, however, uses a piling method invented in the 1970s. It producers heap the tea in warm, damp piles to accelerate the fermentation, mimicking that 30-year aging process in just a few weeks. The flavor is profoundly earthy, reminiscent of a forest floor after a spring rain or high-quality leather and tobacco. It is an acquired taste, but for many, it represents the ultimate depth of the Camellia sinensis plant. Now, we must address the most common mistake in the beverage world. If you go to a cafe and order a peppermint tea, a chamomile tea, or a ginger tea, you are technically not drinking tea. You are drinking a tisane. A tisane is any infusion made from plants, roots, or flowers other than Camellia sinensis. This distinction is vital because the script DNA of a true tea includes specific compounds like L-theanine and caffeine that interact to provide calm alertness. Tisanes, however, have their own medicinal and sensory profiles. Rooibos. Hailing from South Africa's Cederberg Mountains, this red bush is technically a legume. It produces a sweet, nutty, vanilla-scented infusion that is naturally caffeine-free and rich in electrolytes. It became a global sensation in the early 2000s as the ultimate evening alternative to black tea. Hibiscus, known as carcaid in Egypt or agua de Jamaica in Mexico, this deep red flower produces a tart, cranberry-like infusion. It is packed with vitamin C and is one of the few infusions that tastes just as powerful cold as it does hot. Yerba mate. This is the social fuel of South America. While not a true tea, it is a member of the Holly family and is one of the few tisanes that contains a massive caffeine punch. In Argentina and Uruguay, it is a communal ritual. He is sipped through a metal straw called a bombilla from a shared gourd. The confusion exists because we use the same brewing method, hot water, and a filter, but the chemistry of a peppermint leaf is worlds apart from the chemistry of a tea leaf. While much of tea is about looking backward at tradition, the 21st century has introduced a high-energy pacing to the ritual. Matcha is the prime example of this evolution. Unlike regular tea, where you steep the leaves and then discard them, matcha involves shading the tea plants for weeks before harvest to boost chlorophyll, then grinding the leaves into a microscopic green powder. When you drink matcha, you are whisking the powder into the water and consuming the entire leaf. This means you get a massive hit of antioxidants, specifically EGCG, and a caffeine level that can rival a cup of coffee. It is a vibrant, neon green shot of energy that originated in the Song dynasty of China but was perfected in the Japanese tea ceremony. In the 2020s, the third wave of tea has introduced nitro tea. Borrowing a page from the craft beer playbook, high-quality cold brewed tea is infused with nitrogen gas under high pressure. This doesn't change the flavor so much as the texture. It creates a velvety, creamy mouthfeel and a thick head of microfoam that looks identical to a stout beer. It's a bridge between the ancient health ritual and the modern, fast-paced, ready-to-drink market that is currently exploding in urban centers. It proves that tea isn't a static relic, it is an evolving technology. To truly explain all teas, we must look at how the world drinks them. Many assume the UK is the tea capital of the world, but the data, the proof, tells a different story. As of 2026, Turkey is the undisputed world leader in tea consumption. The average Turkish citizen consumes over 3.1 kilograms of tea per year. That's roughly 1,300 cups. It's served in small, tulip-shaped glasses to show off the clarity of the rabbit's blood red color. It is brewed in a Chaidan Luk, a stacked double teapot that allows the drinker to customize the strength of their tea with hot water. In Morocco, tea is synonymous with Maghrebi mint. This is a specific high-stakes ritual involving Chinese gunpowder green tea, a mountain of fresh spearmint, and a significant amount of sugar. The tea is poured from a silver teapot held high above the glass. This isn't just for show. The long pour aerates the tea, creating a signature layer of foam known as the crown. If there is no foam, the tea isn't ready to be served. In India, the ritual is masala chai. This is a decoction, not an infusion. Black tea is boiled directly in a pot with milk, sugar, and a kaha of spices, usually ginger, cardamom, cloves, and cinnamon. Popularized during the British Raj to encourage local consumption, it has become the lifeblood of the Indian subcontinent. Chaiwalas are the baristas of the streets, pulling tea between two vessels to create a frothy, spicy, and steaming cup that fuels over 1 billion people. In many regions, it is still served in kulhards, unglazed clay cups that are intended to be smashed on the ground after one use, returning the clay to the earth in a perfect cycle of sustainability. The most common reason people claim they don't like tea is bitterness, but in the world of high-end tea, bitterness is considered a flaw of the brewer, not the bean. This is the clone checklist rule. Green tea should never be brewed with boiling water. Boiling water, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, burns the delicate polyphenols in green and white tea, releasing harsh tannins. If you want the creamy and sweet notes we've discussed, you must use cooler water, roughly 175 degrees Fahrenheit, 80 degrees Celsius. Black tea and pu'er, however, are rugged. They require boiling water to extract their deep, woody character. Understanding this simple temperature shift is the difference between a cup of bitter grass and a cup of liquid emeralds. The credibility of tea's impact on human history is undeniable. UNESCO has officially recognized the traditional tea processing techniques and associated social practices in China as intangible cultural heritage. From a health perspective, 2026 reviews confirm that the unique combination of caffeine and L-theanine in tea creates a plateau of focus, avoiding the crash associated with coffee or energy drinks. It is a biological superfood that has been refined by 4,000 years of human trial and error. Whether you are sipping a $5,000 aged pu'er in a quiet mountain temple or grabbing a quick iced black tea from a drive-thru in the American South, you are participating in a 4,000-year-old chemical experiment. Every cup is a delicate balance of temperature, mineral content in the water, and the DNA of a single, resilient plant from the misty mountains of East Asia. The finished drink has a clarity, a history, and a sensory depth that surprises most people once they look past the dusty tea bag and into the whole leaf. The next time you hold a warm cup in your hands, remember, you aren't just drinking a beverage. You are drinking the history of global trade, the evolution of ancient chemistry, and a ritual that connects you to billions of people across every continent. So, what's in your mug today? Are you a 1,300 cup a year Turkey-style drinker, or is your ritual strictly herbal tisanes? Are you brewing your green tea at 175 degrees, or have you been scalding your leaves all this time? Let us know your tea routine in the comments. We read every single one to help build our next deep dive.